Okay, let's get started. I can see most people in that we're expected to come in. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar. I'm Jack. I'm the commercial director for Org Advisory and Managed Solutions here in Southeast Asia. Before we get into it, I just want to set a little bit of context regarding the title of the event. Originally, we were doing the innovation layer for your legacy ERP and what that could be missing. I've spoken to quite a few of the participants in the webinar, and from a lot of people's problem statements or opportunities, it seems that they actually would like to talk about it beyond ERP and also and also for other systems. So whilst the content is perfectly relevant for ERP, it can also, what we talk about will also be relevant for other systems. As the speakers present, what I think is best is if you think about how your frameworks, how these frameworks will apply to your own individual organization problems and opportunities. That would be the best way to go through the journey. For questions, we're going to do questions at the end. There's a Q&A button at the bottom. So if you just press that and then type your questions, I will see the questions coming through on my side, and then we'll address them at the end. Okay, so to introduce the speakers that we've got, first will be Kenneth He. Kenneth is the ex-CIO of Goodpack, and he's a core partner here at Org. He's led IT across APAC for the past 25 years. He his he understands like the pain points that an organization would be going through for scaling the business systems, and he's going to help us frame them from a legacy, operation, and gaps. Then we're going to move on to LG, who is the co-founder and CEO of Algo AI. He's a seasoned data scientist and a solution designer. He'll dive into the practical engineering side to show us how Agentic AI actually acts as the missing execution layer. And then closing the presentation will be Lawrence Liu. Lawrence is the director of AI innovation at AI Singapore. He's going to walk us through the AI readiness index framework to help you benchmark your own organization's maturity, and then talk about funding and how AI Singapore can support you with that. Before we get into them, let me just give you a quick context on Org and the Org group, if you don't know who we are. So we're Org Advisory and Managed Solutions. We're an advisory and consulting firm. I'll tell you more about us in the next slide, but we're actually part of a wider group, which is Org Group. So Org Group is headquartered in Ireland. We have a global presence focused on people solutions, be it recruitment, BPO services, or advisory and consulting. We've been in business since the 80s, and organizational engineering is our core philosophy, as you can see on the screen there. And then below that, you can see all of our brands. So back to Org Advisory Managed Solutions, who we are. Our core mantra is more human, please. So that means our consultants that we use to do our projects with you, they've sat in your chair, they've walked in your shoes, they've been part of customers and their journey. It's not about just throwing technology at your problems. So we focus entirely on understanding your transformational why, and how to deliver customized business outcomes. Our philosophy really relies on these three principles. So we're business led. So we put your corporate objectives at the heart of everything we do. We're value driven. So every recommendation must accelerate a measurable, lasting value. And then we're tech enabled. So we focus on leveraging the right technology stack to drive your growth. Here are our core business services. So we've got advisory, we've got enterprise applications or business systems, and then automation and agentic AI. We are entirely software and vendor agnostic. We wouldn't push or force any off-the-shelf answers to you. We actually work as an extension of your team to map out clear, realistic milestones, whether that's via an enterprise assessment, a rapid review, or an idea to innovate framework as well. As I mentioned at the start, the legacy technology isn't an IT headache. It's a holistic business transformation challenge. So it requires the right strategy, proper engineering, and organizational readiness framework. Just to reiterate, we're tech agnostic, aiming to make your organization succeed through people, process, and technology transformation as your trusted partner. Okay, so I'll move over to Kenneth now. to get into the webinar.
Thanks, Jack. As Jack introduced me earlier on, my name is Kenneth He. I'm the principal advisor for Rhythm, right, which is a co-partner for org in the IT change management space. Jack, can you put it on projection mode, please? It's not on projection mode. Thank you. All right. So my job here today is really to set a scene, right? This is a result of an ongoing conversation that I've been having with org and some of their customers. Where do we see the challenges of AI transformation? And there's no shortage of statistics that tells you there are a lot of challenges, either to get off the ground or to scale, right? From POC, it's easy to have a POC, isolated use case, but the moment you scale to production, that's a different story altogether. And that's where we see all sorts of challenges being brought to the table. And here is a brief framework of some of the key challenges we see. This, I must clarify, this is not the conversation we are having today. All right. The conversation what we're having today is the one at the bottom right, which is the tech stack. Of all the levers that we see as of transformation that you need to address, this is a stack that we do not talk to much about our to our stakeholders, right? This is an assumed readily available. Well, the question is now, how readily available is it? As an ex-CIO myself, I've seen no shortage of legacy environments that just to cross across the bridge to have the next stack of technology, you may be burdened by some of your existing legacy systems. So how do we bridge that? And this is where I would like to start the conversation today. What is readily available for you, right? What are the options that you may have to get on with the AI transformation agenda, assuming all these other levers are in place, are addressed. All right. So without much more delay, I'd like to hand over the session to Lee, all right, who will take you to a preview as to, well, how does a partner play a role, right, in providing you both some of the advisory as well as the technology stack, right, that is up and running, ready to use. Over to you, Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Kenneth. Right, so good morning, everyone. So, a quick introduction. I'm Lee Kang, right? Just call me LG. So, I run the firm Algo, and a quick introduction of who we are. So, we are one of the top enterprise AI implementation experts, right? So, where we help companies move a lot of their POCs into productions. So, currently operating in 5 countries, right? Part of IMDA's Spark program as well, and usually partners with SI. So, next. All right, so on a high level, so what we do, we provide a platform that allows people to actually speed up the entire life cycle from build, right, designing to deploying and monitoring their AI applications within their organization. On top of that, we also provide trainings, right, bespoke solution development and even model development for companies. So that's what we do. But today, I think we'll be talking on a much larger topic, right, on how does this process actually work, right? So you have all your existing legacy systems. How do you then tap on it effectively to actually build the kind of use case that actually works for your company, right? And then what are some of the pitfalls as well as, right? What are some examples, right, in terms of how others have done it? So maybe before that, let's take a step back into what's the current state, right, of the AI right now. Next, please. Right, so I'll just do a very quick share. So I think right now, based on we have spoken to quite a lot of tech executives from companies large and small, but a very high level kind of statistic is only 1 out of 10 companies, despite everyone is talking about AI, has really successfully pushed something in production. That means it's being scaled across organization and used effectively. Right, that number is very, very small. right? So most companies right now, they're still at the experimental stage, still asking from more early stage, they are asking questions of what can AI do, what AI can't do, right? And more of right now, a lot of them are also stuck in POCs. They got their experiment. They're asking then, how could we actually move to make sure that AI works reliably and accurately and safely for the organization? So right now, what we see is a very big barrier that's blocking a lot of companies, right, moving from POC to production. And there's three main reasons, right? So one is inaccuracy. Sometimes like most of the AI is very hard to actually move to a level of accuracy that's actually suitable for the business operations. It's typically unsafe and sometimes also unreliable, especially for medium and high risk applications and workflows. It's very hard to actually deploy something that probably works like 80% of the time. Right, you need it to be a very, very high reliability. And all these three needs to be solved. Right, and next, please. Right, so then when we look at the tools available, I think generally if you think there's a lot of tools, right? Yesterday night, evening, I was just at another event and they were sharing right now, based on a very quick scan, there are more than 20,000 AI tools alone, excluding tools from China or from Asia, right? Just US alone, more than 20,000 AI tools. That's too much, right? It's impossible for us to understand what does every tool does, whether it's good for this use case or that use case, right? And you get actually just stuck in just chasing, getting caught up with all the latest AI news. So if you break that into a few buckets, not exhaustive, a few main buckets, a lot of them actually falls under the Copilot, right? This like your Microsoft Copilot, your typical ChatGPT, your Gemini, your cloud, right? Where you have an interface, a single person chats with it, right? So these kind of tools for many use cases that actually have a single person interacting with it works very well, right? So different tools that have different kind of integration capabilities, but the downside of these tools is usually is very limited in terms of customizability. If you think about a more end-to-end workflow, it's then very hard to customize according to your process. Or if you have multi-stakeholders coming in, then it's very hard to actually work. Right, so this one bucket of tools, very useful for certain use case, right? Simple single user interaction ones, very easy to set up. The second bucket we look at is workflow tools, where you can actually go in and actually build and your workflows, right? This can go from your LangGraph, Defy, N8N, and a lot of other tools out there, right? So these are very flexible, very customizable, but typically companies, teams, right, we see that they actually need people with deep expertise in terms of designing how the workflow should look like, configuring and testing it, and make sure it's robust. And still then, when they push to production, they still need to build a lot of the safety layers in between. So good for things that if you're running internal multi-orchestration, right? Integration is possible as well, right? So workflow tools is very good for that, but you need someone that knows how to do that. Then lastly, we usually see a lot others like point solutions, right? So solutions that actually fix certain verticals, certain specific use case from being marketing, SEO, GEO, right, to actually this sales automation or even CRM, right? So these are point solutions. Usually they are actually tuned to that specific task, usually performs those tasks very well, right? And typically also have tight integrations with the kind of the typical major kind of softwares. But usually these are also looking at a very specific process, right? Single parts or chunks group of process, not really end to end. And in terms of that, and for more complex, larger organizations, the level of customizability might not also be there, right? So there are a lot of different tools out there, but in depending on your use case, different tools might come in for different use. So next, please, Jack. Right. So instead of jumping into the thousands, right, of tools out there, I think a lot of times leaders, right, business leaders, they get lost into their pressure being everyone's talking about AI, everyone's saying like we should leverage AI in our business. Right. You should always take a step back, right? It's always the business, place the business first, AI or even the tools second. Right, that's a very important thing that we see in like organizations that teams that actually effectively adopt and transform their process actually adopt, right? So don't ask like what tools you should use. Instead, look back at your own organization, your context, right? What problem are you trying to solve? And even within the same organization, you might have different problems, and each problem might actually require a different kind of tool sets. And I don't think that in the near future there will be any kind of a unified, a single tool or single stack that you work across all use case. Right, so it will remain fragmented. Every very different tool will have their very specific purpose. So coming back to the business, right? So typically what we typically ask is like, what are the pain points, opportunities? Identify those first, looking at who, right? Identify the ownership as well, who will actually own this problem, who is actually accountable to ensure this works. What happens if it doesn't work out? If something it gets wrong, what's the risk, right? And what is the impact, the outcome when it's solved or you left it unsolved? So these are some of the key questions to ask before even thinking what tools to use. And also next please, Jack. So another key thing to also think about is then instead of a lot of companies just look at their existing process, right? So step by step, and they just digitalize. They just translate it from a current, probably a manual process into a digital kind of process, maybe simple automation. But in many cases, this doesn't really help in terms of the overall larger organization transform or get that much value, right? So right now, with a lot of the new tools and new capabilities being introduced by AI, it's also a good time to actually pause and rethink how could you, how the work, right? How your business can be run differently with these new capabilities. Think of a more end-to-end holistic comprehensive transformation. So in the slides, I have a few examples from the first one, right? From a customer success, or let's say a customer support, right? Customers might submit a request, wait for staff to review and get back, right? The AI can digitally summarize or pull answer questions from documents. But what could be done instead rethink the whole customer support process, right? Can we also, a lot of the downstream actions that's done by multiple different teams, can we all compress it together? Let's say if customers requires, let's say check their previous status, perform a system action, right? Or let's say place their orders or check other things, or even giving personalized, right, proactive notifications to customers, reminders, right? That would be a good way to think about the process, right? That is the one that you should actually rethink and see, is there any opportunity here that we can actually work on? Okay, so that's on a high level in terms of some of the things that you should think about before even starting, right? Business first, try to look at end-to-end process, right? So I know then a lot of companies right now will also then ask, okay, right now, am I ready? So we have we have legacy systems, right? So how do we even run a kind of AI project? So maybe I'll use an example. Right, next, please. Right, so I share one use case that we help a company. So this Grossbeckett, so they are a global German manufacturer for industrial needles, one of the top manufacturers for industrial needles in the world. So their use case is straightforward, right? So customer support, 150 countries, different time zone, different language, and they are now selling to machine builders, right? They use their needles to put in their machines, right? And there's a lot of things that happens, and within the organization itself, right, there are 4 different teams that's handling different queries for different customers, from post-sales or sales, doing creating new orders, checking delivery status, right? Then from the finance, doing invoice, right? Checking, make sure they invoice with the DO, everything is sent, right? So then all the way to technical engineers that actually helps with technical troubleshooting, right? And generate customer success, right? How do they upsell, make sure customer happy, right? Increase the orders. So there's a wide variety of different tasks. So, and they are actually using SAP, right? And not the new SAP, the old SAP, very bulky to actually store most of their system, their data, right? Their inventory, their sales, their pricing, their BOM, right? Their bill of materials, right? Their production capacity, their planning, inventory management, all of this is mostly in their SAP. So instead of pulling everything out, creating a new data warehouse, going through years of transformation before they can tap, what we help them do is we actually build an AI layer on top of the existing legacy system. And this can actually connect through, right? They actually connect through their APIs. Some they actually create their own gateways, another additional layer of APIs to filter those access, and we connect with those. And through connecting with those, right, the AI is able to, in real time, once the customer logs in, we know who the customer is. We can pull the relevant records in the system. You can automate and even create orders, right? Create orders within the system directly through the AI and automate all those process. Right, so that's just an example, right? So you don't really need to do very much. So as long as you have a good foundation in terms of your data architecture systems in place, you're able to actually tap on that. And it really depends what you want to tap on, depends on the use case. And this differs very slightly from how previously companies are trying to do this, right? So previously, if you want to do any kind of large scale transformation, they typically that you need to your data is all in silos. You need to put all of them together, typically in a data warehouse or lake house. And that itself is a huge effort. You need to tidy up everything, clean everything before you can actually leverage. Right now, what we've seen organizations have slowly moved to is their use case focus. Just for this particular use case that I want to target, what is the only data that I only need? And then they can actually even use AI to actually build some of these pipelines, retrieve it in real time, transform it, and use it without necessarily going through that huge, right, whole implementation in terms of data migration, data cleaning. You still need to clean your data, but only those that you need and not everything. Right, so that's another approach that we have seen. So this is one example. So then probably you see that what are the use case, right? So in terms of the different industry that we see, AI has been implemented quite successfully. So probably I'll share a few more. Jack? Yeah. Right, a quick one. So not just in terms of manufacturing customer support, we have also seen, right, a lot of other interesting use cases. I'll share a few that we actually worked with some of our clients last year. Right, so this is one of the largest media companies in Singapore. So what we do, their promise statement is, how can I do, like say, how do I improve my sales process? Right, from pitching to clients, generating a proposal that typically takes usually 2 to 3 weeks for all the research to be conducted all the way to the finalization of proposal. The AI then comes in to actually redo many of these parts, and they take this opportunity to actually rethink. Instead of replicating what the salesperson has been doing, can we do it better? So here they actually tap in a lot of other resources, right? So they are actually selling to very high value clients for ads, right? So what they did is the AI helped them actually do a market research, identify who their target audience is, what's their audience user journey, what are the different touch points that they can target, how their competitors are doing it, how do they do the brand differentiation, all this analysis, right? Coming into a very, very data-driven kind of sales proposal pitch. Right, and this is able to drive a very significant increase in their deals, their deal conversion rates, and also the time, right? Drastic reduction in terms of the time required to prepare a proposal from weeks to just a day. Okay, next. So another interesting one. So if you are looking at, okay, I probably don't have a lot of system if I have a lot of document heavy, right? And these documents or this data is out of my control, right? In such use case, how would AI be able to help? So this particular use case, we work with a aerospace company. What they do is they typically buy and sell and lease aircraft engines, right? To let's say airplanes, right? To like SIA, Emirates and stuff. So one of the pain points they do is every time they need to look when they decide whether to decide to buy an aircraft engine, they spend considerable time. Right, they go through all they call it the mini pack, which is a stack of technical documents from all the performance review, service maintenance reports, figure out all the status, whether this and calculate their valuation. What the AI is able to do very well in terms of extracting this key information, making sure they're accurate, building validation layers to check the accuracy, and then compiling that into the valuation computation. Right, so this we have also seen that this now they are actually what took them probably days, right? A few person just to do this, actually now takes them in less than 20 minutes to complete the whole cycle for each engine, allow them to actually review more and find the better deals in the market. Okay, next one. So for more technical, so there are even some case where you are cross system, you have multiple system. How do that work, right? So one of the engineering company, our precision engineering manufacturer that we work with, right? Every time custom comes in, they always come with custom requests. They need to say, oh, I need to fulfill this. Then there's actually a technical solutions engineer come in that actually figure out based on the requirements, based on all my inventory, my SKUs, right, all the different parts. How do I actually combine these parts to actually fulfill the client's need? Then they actually calculate whether they still need to build up custom parts. Is there missing anything? Then what would be the BOM list, right? How do I even come to a quotation? Right. So the AI right now, similar concept, you're able to tap on as long as there's access to a system API or a database, you're able to pull those information, including like those components drawing with all the metadata, see whether it's relevant, and even then propose, right? Coming out with the bill of materials and also the kind of quotation required. And they can actually send this back to the customers directly or clarify with the customers if their requirements are unclear. That's another example. So maybe the next one. The last one I'll probably share is coming even in finance, right? What you do in a typical two-way matching. Let's say look at purchase orders, delivery orders, invoice, matching them, whether you should actually pay, whether there's any mismatch. Similar concept, a lot of documents, as long as there's a clear logic, you are able to actually do that as well. Okay, so those are some of the examples, right? So, but then a lot of times companies say, then how do we go about this? Yes, let's say we have this idea, we have a certain use case. How do we go about like starting this journey? Right. So I previously said this a very high level simplified process. Jack, let's go. Right. So I just quickly share, right? So how it typically works. So I think for most companies, right, so they usually start with use case identification. It's typically good to actually go through some list of the use case as well. Prioritize that based on your business priority. Which one has actually more impact, right, to your company. Then you start with that. So identify, make sure you have a clear business problem, right? That's the second, the first purple box there. If not, you refine, right? You go back, discuss, refine the uses, find something that is worthwhile to work on that really helps the company and not just for show, right? Then after that, only then you think, what are the tools most suitable to suit it? Is AI really needed? In many cases, what we've seen when we talk to customers, a large chunk of the use case, right, actually doesn't need AI at all. Right. So if it's solved with an easier, simpler tool, that is always the best. So you use those tools, right? Use the right tools for the right problems. Then if AI is required, then you look out, right? Always look out whether there's existing solutions that already can solve this. If yes, go ahead, get those configure, integrate. If not, then you look at that. Then is this use case, you start to look, if you come get something readily available, then you either do, you build, or you have to get someone to build it for you, right? So is the use case high value? You look at ROI now, and is it feasible? Should you break it into smaller parts or relook at the problem, right? So if not, it's not feasible or it's not really high value as of now, just hold and deprioritize. If yes, let's then look at internally first, right? Do you have the capability to do this, right? So yes, then of course you start developing a POC, then move it to production. If not, then only look out for suitable vendors or service providers that have the experience and expertise that whether they are able to help, right? If no, then you probably hold it and probably then you need to start training your internal capability, right? To then allow you to take some time, but then your internal team will then be able to develop. If you then decided, let's say there's suitable vendors, right? They have been done this before, you can then engage them. Usually we see companies develop a small POC first to test everything. And because a lot of times during the POC itself, you learn things that you haven't thought of before. What are the key metrics? What are things that things might go wrong? Where actually we should tighten? Where are some of the risk areas that we haven't identified before the project? Right? Through the POC, you'll be able to identify those. Then when you want to move it to scale to organization to actually move it to production, ensure that these are fixed or addressed. Right? Does it meet your success criteria? Is it able to meet, let's say, your 95% accuracy requirements? Then yes, then you only deploy, right, in production. So that's a high level, right? And many cases, a lot of the works, right, actually is the front, the important steps are actually the front, while those that time-consuming is on the implementation part. Properly identifying use case, choosing the right approach to address, right, those is very critical. And actually, most use case fails, right, or get stuck in POC. It's not because of the build, it's because of the planning part. But I quickly jump through again and at the last part, how implementation typically looks like. So if you think at the technical team, right, when you start to implement, there's typically many steps, right? Usually a prototype can build using anything, right? So it's typically very fast, takes teams probably around, right? For a medium complexity project, probably around 1.5 months, you get a POC, right? Seems to work, doesn't work all the time, but at least it proves that this can be done. Right, so if that thing can be done, then you then evaluate how good it is. Does it meet my success criteria? It needs to be no 0% hallucination, right? 95% accuracy. Then you evaluate, then you make what is the gaps in between, right? Where it's not performing. How can I control, tighten those? Anything that I need to add in. So you evaluate, you build in the harness, right? The code around the AI, right? The workflow level controls, other different layer controls, you build those in. And this typically takes the most time, right? Especially for use case that are very, very high complexity. You need, let's say, 98% accuracy, right? The higher the accuracy or the kind of requirement is, usually it's a diminishing real. You need to spend way more time to actually get that. So this is the cycle that takes a lot of time. After that, you typically build in trace as well. You need to monitor, collect the information in between what's happening, not just the start and the end of the whole workflow, right? Then you need to ensure that it is secure, especially if you're launching to your customers, to the public, and sensitive data is involved. You need to properly test, make sure it's secure. Then you deploy. And a lot of people also forget about the monitoring part. Not after you deploy, it's not just done, right? You still need to also look at, right? How is the performance like? Any gaps that you never actually planned before that's happening? Any other vulnerabilities, any alerts? Right, you need to set those up as well and continue monitoring. If anything goes wrong, go back and fix. And this process is typically what goes in a production, right? POC to production for AI solutions. But across different projects, it varies, right? Simpler projects, not so high requirements, it can be shorter, right? Some it can be even longer, spanning 3 years. So this seems like there's a lot of things, right? So I think depending on your context, your use case, don't worry too much about, focus on that one use case, right? What I usually always recommend companies is focus on that one use case that matters, make it work for that. Then you move on to the next. And once you start moving across different use case, you can start thinking about across horizontally, how do I manage all of this? How do I optimize this process? Right? But optimization always comes last, right? Make it work first. Okay, with that, right? So that's typically what I'll cover, right? So a quick summary in terms of when looking at use case, especially with a lot of legacy systems, focus on the business, simplify that, right? Focus on one, business first, tools, AI second. Try to also rethink, transform your process, not just translate it in another format, digital format. And if needed, right, find the suitable partners, tools, or resource to make it happen. Now I'll then pass to Lawrence from AI Singapore, where he'll share with you some of the programs on AI Singapore, actually how they can help you in this journey. Yeah, to you, Lawrence.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Lee. I guess good morning, everyone. So my name is Lawrence. I'm Director for AI Innovation in AI Singapore. And AI Singapore, we are a government funded national AI R&D program. Where we fund research into AI. We also fund a lot of co-creation, co-development efforts, very similar to what Lee has said, where we take customers to POC and MVP stage. And then after which we hand over to the customer, and the customer can either continue to build it out themselves or obviously work with a organization like Algo to actually go into production. So in this slide, we've been doing this for nearly 10 years already. AI Singapore has been around for 9 years. We conceptualized it back in 2016. So it's been a 10 years journey. And over the last 9 years, we have created a number of tools to actually help companies to better identify where they are in their AI journey and what sort of programs would be relevant to them. So one of this is the AI Readiness Index. So this was developed back in 2019, and the whole purpose was to help customers understand where they are in terms of their AI maturity, so that they know, so that not just they, but also we know whether they are ready to actually execute the AI project. So when we created this, we were very clear. It was meant to be a very simple 12 questions. Today, the new version 3.1 is 15 questions, where in less than 10 minutes, right? By answering these 15 questions, you get a sense of where you are, whether you are AI unaware, aware, ready, competent, or at an AI catalyst level. Why is this so important? Because with this, we then know how to engage the company. We know what programs to recommend. And if they are not AI ready, then we'll say, well, you need to get your data ready first, or you need to have more of your employees to become AI aware. So these are interventions which you wouldn't know whether you need them until you do a survey like this. Again, it is a very simple 10, 15 minutes survey that anyone can actually do. So we look at a couple of things, and actually a lot of this actually has been mentioned by Lee. So I'll validate what he has just shared. It is actually what we ourselves have used over the last 9 years. And obviously you need organization readiness. That means you need some of the larger organizations, you may have your own AI engineers, but for most small organizations, you may not have your own team. But nevertheless, there are service providers like Algo, there are institutions like AI Singapore that can help you. But one thing that a lot of companies actually forget about is AI literacy. To get AI into your organizations, you need to make sure that all your people are aligned with what the organization is trying to do, which means you need your admin staff, your sales staff, your marketing staff, your workers in the production floor, if you're running manufacturing, to actually become AI aware so that they know what is AI. And the message has to be very clear from management that you're going to bring AI to increase productivity, to be able to better compete with your competitors. And obviously, right, we would like all management to have to say that AI is not being brought in to reduce headcount. And what I tell a lot of the small organizations is you should be bringing AI in not to reduce headcount, but to keep the same number of headcount, maybe even increase it a little bit, so that you can compete 5x or 10x what you were previously doing, right? If you were to bring in AI or technology to reduce headcount, then I don't think you are leveraging the best value and that AI can bring to your organization, because every headcount you have domain expertise, and this domain expertise is what that will amplify the AI that you bring in. So if you remove your experts and you think the AI will replace what they are doing, then you'll find that you're actually not progressing. You wouldn't be progressing much at all. So this is something that we stress a lot. Obviously, you need to look at governance and ethics, and like what Lee has shared on business value. So one of the things that we ask is, why are you doing this AI project? What is the ROI? How much money are you going to make, or how much money are you going to save, right? How is it going to transform your business? So don't do an AI project because the CEO said so, right? Everybody must have one AI project. But even if you have such a directive, someone or a committee needs to evaluate every project that is being done, so that you actually will know whether is this a right project to do or not. Infrastructure and data readiness are two important bits. Infrastructure readiness today actually is quite simple. Most organizations can easily acquire them because of all the various cloud providers. So it's less of a hurdle. The biggest hurdle we see is data readiness. If you don't have data, you can't do AI. Very simple. So it's much harder to get your data to be at a ready state than your infrastructure, because you can actually buy infrastructure that is AI ready today, with a swipe of a credit card. So that is a less of a problem. Next slide, please, Jack. So we have, in AI Singapore, we have worked on nearly 300 AI projects over the last 9 years, helping our SMEs like UParcel, Livetree, government agencies, whether the hospital, SCDF, or financial institutions like GIC, to build various AI projects. I won't spend too much time. All these projects are actually they have done videos. They're very happy with the outcome. So these are actually all customers' testimonial. You can find them on YouTube /AI Singapore. We have done projects for insurance companies like Sompo, IBM, Continental. Those are both engineering, manufacturing projects in the QC area. And so this first 9 are our projects that we actually do under a 100 experiment, where we co-create the projects with the companies, where we actually put in our engineers, and we use these projects to train future AI talent. We call them apprentices, so that every project we will be able to train anywhere from 2 to 4 apprentices, and they actually end up to be AI engineers, right? The way this program works is you put in if it's a 3 months POC, you put in 40K in kind. I'll put in 40K of resources, so it's 80K project that will execute a 3 months POC. And if it's a little bit more complicated projects where we need a bigger team, longer duration, AI Singapore will co-fund 150K of in-kind resources. We don't give you the cash, and the company that has a project approved by our committee will have to put in 150K also. So it's a 1-to-1 match. But the 150K from the company, 30% is cash, 70% is in kind. And this is important because, as in most government funded programs, you need to have skin in the game. So your 30% cash that you pay to AI Singapore will go towards funding the program, the engineers, the apprentices. Your 70% in kind is also very important, because our goal is really to enable your organization and your team to be able to execute and take over the project from us at the end of the 6 months MVP. So we need to work very closely with your team to actually co-create the solution. We need to work closely with your domain experts, because today to build AI is not just about algorithms. It's very much about the domain, knowing and understanding the domain. In fact, I would say 70% of the success of an AI project is the domain, not the AI algorithm. The AI algorithm are commodities today. So with that, we co-fund the projects for this organizations that wants to build a bit more complicated projects. And for those that are a lot simpler, we do get a lot of requests, and especially today with all the agentic coding tools, it's made it very easy for companies to onboard or to build their own applications, whether it's low code, no code, or agentic coding agents. We have programs where we don't build for the company, but we actually train them to use these tools to understand how to build, and we handhold them to actually get their project delivered. So our fundamental belief is that training cannot happen in a classroom. Learning doesn't happen in a classroom. So we always like to use real projects. So under the LADP, we actually will spend the new version is 1 month. So there'll be 2 to 3 days of training, after which we will handhold the company participants to actually build their own, to actually solve their own problem statement with this LLM tools, right? So that the outcome is not only do you get a trained staff, but you actually get a solution built. So we are very careful in the SOW to make sure that the staff that's undergoing this training actually have the skills, the knowledge to be able to get the problem solved. And if not, then we have to readjust the scope of deliverable, or we have to say, okay, this 2-person maybe you need to add 1 or 2 more staff to the project team to get it done. Jack, next slide, please. One of the latest program that we launched. First is the 100 experiments where we did the projects for the companies. Then we have the LADP where we actually mentor the companies to actually solve their own problems. AIX Tech is the newest one, and for companies here that have a lot of software engineers who are not sure about this whole thing about agentic coding assistance, we have partnered with IMDA to actually launch this program about a month ago, where we will sponsor a certain amount of credits for software engineers, tech professionals to actually start using AI coding assistance. So it's broken into two phases. So for first phase, we have like probably 18 to 20 hours of curriculum that you have to go through. The cost fee is 180 for Singaporeans and PR. If not, the full cost fee is like nearly $2,000. So it's highly sponsored, and you have to finish this curriculum first. Once you finish, and during this power phase, you get access to AWS, all the coding tools that AWS have, Microsoft, OpenAI, Z.AI, and so on. We are slowly onboarding more and more of them. Once you finish the first power phase, that's when you unlock $600 of subscription credits to use in any of these tools. So imagine paying 180, and once you finish the course, you actually get back $600 of subscription credits. So that's how we are trying to encourage more tech professionals to pick up and accelerate the adoption of this sort of coding assistance. I think, Jack, next slide. I think this is probably my last. Yeah. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence, and also thank you to Kenneth and LG. All of those very, very insightful. I've definitely learned a lot, and I hope everyone on the webinar has as well. So what we've done is we've looked at the foundational problem, a technical solution layer, and then also the organizational framework needed to scale it. As it's been going on, some questions have been coming through on my side. Bear with me, I've just got to flick screen so I can read them out. So might only get time for one or two, but first question, I'll leave it to Lawrence, LG, or Kenneth. Any of you chime in with an answer. First question is, what criteria should we use to decide which business processes are ready for full AI-driven transformation? And what are the most common mistakes or pitfalls? And I assume, it doesn't say, but I assume in selecting that criteria.
I can have a go first. So basically, we conduct this sort of AI prioritization ideation workshop, and exactly the flow is more or less what Lee has shared. But very often it's you have to rank and prioritize them, right? But once you rank and prioritize them, you have to go down the next level and ask, right, what's the ROI of these projects, and do you even have the infrastructure and the data to actually get this done? So using the 5 pillars of ARI, you can actually convert that into a ideation and prioritization flow, where we have used it several times to actually help customers identify and rank and prioritize suitable AI projects. And very often, for customers new to AI, the first few projects typically we recommend is not transformation, but automation, about cost savings and so on, because you need to get your hands dirty first to exactly have a sense of what AI can do. Then you can start thinking the transformation bit. So phase one is all about automation and using AI to automate, to reduce costs and to improve efficiency. And once you have a sense of that, you have tasted success, then that's the next phase is about transformation. So that's a much bigger play. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lawrence covered that very well. So probably I focus a bit more on the mistakes and pitfalls, right? So like Lawrence said, a lot of times while you look at, okay, these are the different kind of the priority in terms of the business process. There are some that are very good outcomes, right? But you also need to look at the effort wise, right? Try to go for quick wins at the start, as to actually get the learning momentum within the team, the organization to adapt to this, right? Instead of going straight for the big, right, multi-year strategic transformation kind of projects. So you can balance it out, right? For probably the first year you tried out this, the team is ready. You use that to actually analyze how do you actually going to manage this, other risks that you haven't considered, how do you govern this? Then you start to scale into more complex projects. So that's one, right? Second is usually, I think, if you look at, there are also, in terms of business outcomes and process, there are also some process that's actually more suitable for kind of AI to actually come in, right? Typically, you think of this, like, usually AI, you can think of it as a few superpowers, right? They are good at data from gathering data from multiple different sources, performing research, right? And doing actually automating a lot of your tedious manual tasks. So you look at, usually we list this out, how frequent this problem happens, right? And how much pain point does people actually like doing it, right? And usually go for those that with very little kind of decision points. If a certain process you need to across the end to end, you need to do 7 decision points versus in another case, there's more manual work. There's only 2 decision points. Then probably go for the 2 decision points first, right? Instead of doing the 7 decision points kind of process. So there are various different kind of signals. So I think coming back is, as long as you identify the pain point, the ROI effort, right? Then you make a balance based on the current organization, the team that's going to run this, right? Which is the most suitable for my company, for my team, right? So yeah, that's my take.
So just to chime in, right? If LG mentioned a little bit on the process data readiness, transformation readiness, I think one aspect that we also should think about is also the people that's involved, right? Do you have the right champions behind the initiative? Because especially in the startup phase, you need to think about, well, if this is successful, how is this? This is the first chess piece. Is this who is the leader behind it who can help you spread the mantra as we go through the roadmap of transformation, right? The other piece that you should think about is also the people that's involved. How does the project or the outcome impact the people that's involved? So so my take on this is the metrics on the process and the data and the ROI is the hard metrics are important. But let's also not forget the people side of things, because they are the ones who is also going to impact the success of the project as a whole, and especially when it's the first few chess pieces on the roadmap. Jack?
Yeah, great. Thank you. We've got 3 minutes, but I've got one more interesting question I think we should definitely tackle before we finish. So we currently do not have a formal ERP. Most of our operations are maintained on a massive Excel file. Should our priority be setting up a core legacy system first, or can we leapfrog this and just go straight into utilizing AI? I think, as I say, we've got 2 minutes, so quick thoughts on that one, if possible.
Okay, I'll try take that first, right? So it depends on how kind of your process, right? How important, if this working well in terms of Excel, then depending on your use case as well, if it just touch this and doesn't actually touch multi different systems and not in terms of a very high volume scale, then it's still fine, right? You still can tap on link to a direct Excel, make writes and edits across. But usually systems are great when you have more people coming in, you have user access control. Excel doesn't really do that well. Then if that's in that case, right, then you probably would, a better idea is to move it to a proper ERP, have these controls in place before building the AI layer, because the AI most likely will just inherit what you have. Right? If you don't have those control layers in place, just Excel, the AI will just do that. And sometimes you just pull the information that is not supposed to pull to the right person, right? So then that's where all the risks and mistakes comes in.
I would agree with LG on this. There's the question will be very different if you say that you have a slightly dated ERP versus the latest ERP that has all the embedded AI functionalities and whatnot. Uh, that would have been a very different question. All right, if it's a slightly dated one, then I'll say I think we need to really understand how data and what are the technical possibilities to harness the best out of your legacy system, if you like. But if it's compared to an Excel spreadsheet, then the conversation is very different, because then you're really talking about a system of record that keeps moving, potentially moves, right, without any control. And if your input to your data and AI environment keeps moving, then I would probably say that it might introduce downstream issues later on. So very similar conclusion to what LG was saying earlier on.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think we, because of time, we better leave it there. But obviously, we want to continue the conversation with us. Our team will reach out to you if you attended, with ways you can get back in touch. But on the screen, you've got our website, you've got my email address, you've got my LinkedIn. So please reach out so we can continue talking on these topics. Again, huge thank you to Kenneth, huge thank you to LG. Huge thank you to Lawrence. Really enjoyed the session. Enjoy your afternoon, and yeah, see you soon.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.